Hello, welcome to an e-demo on the initial basic configuration of an Illustra Pro 5MP fisheye camera. What we're going to do today is carry out the initial configuration of this camera. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up a web browser, and I'm going to navigate to the default IP address of the camera, which is 192.168.1.168. You'll see that when I navigate there, I'm presented with the Illustra login page. What I'm going to do is log in with the default admin credentials, so that's username admin and password admin, and then I'm going to choose the login button. The first thing I'm going to see here is a live view from the camera, and what I'm going to do is just select setup here from the top. Because this is the first time I've logged into this camera, this will put me into the basic configuration menu. And this menu will allow us to do some initial basic configuration of our camera to get things like the streams, the users, the date and time, and also the network settings up and running so that we can begin to use the camera. Okay, so the first sub-menu under basic configuration is camera. In camera, the first tab is called mounting, and this will allow us to select either a wall or a ceiling mount for this camera. So you can select whichever applies to wherever you have this camera mounted. You can also choose the camera name tab, and you'll see in there we have the default name for the camera. What I can do is just select that field and enter a more appropriate name for the camera. And if I choose apply, you'll see in the upper right hand corner there that that name has changed. Okay, so let's move then to the second submenu, which is called users, and you'll see by default we just have that one user which we've logged in as, and that's the admin user. And I'm going to add a second user here by choosing the add user tab, and the first thing I'm going to do is set the username for the user. I can also then set the role, so that's going to be admin, operator or user, and then finally I'm going to assign them a password and confirm that password. And if I choose apply, you'll see that I'm now presented with that users tab again, and we have that user which we've just created in that table. If I want to remove that user, I can just select this delete icon here, and then I'll be asked to confirm the deletion, and you'll see that that user has now gone from this camera. The final thing we can do in this users menu is we can change the password of any of our users. So we can go to the change password tab, and I can assign a new password to any of these users just by selecting their username from the drop down, entering their current password and entering a new password for them. Okay, so the next menu then in the basic configuration menu is the date and time menu. So if I just select it, you'll see the first thing in here is the current date and time as set on the camera. And we can choose to make that time 24-hour just by selecting or deselecting that checkbox. Next thing we can do is assign the date format, and then we can also set the time zone which this camera is in just by selecting one from this drop down. Okay, so with all of that set, the next thing we need to do is set the time itself, and there's two options for doing this. You can see we have two radio buttons here. We have manually and we have via NTP. If I choose via NTP, what I need to do is enter an NTP server details into that field there, and the camera will have its time set automatically from that NTP server. If I want to set the time manually, I can just select the manually radio button there, and what I need to do is then select the date and time from these drop downs. I'm just going to set the date first of all, and then manually set the time down to the second using these drop downs here. Once I have all of that set, I can just choose apply, and you'll see that the camera time there has been updated. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is go to the TCP IP menu, and this is where we're going to configure our network settings. So you can see first of all on the IPv4 tab we have DHCP enabled. What that means is this camera has been assigned an address from a DHCP server on the network. If that's the way you want to manage your camera network, you can keep that checked, or you can uncheck it and you can manually assign the network details there. So you can enter an IPv4 IP address, network mask, gateway, and also some DNS servers if you need that as well. We also have an IPv6 tab, and you'll see that by default IPv6 is enabled. We can disable that if we want to by unchecking that box, and you can see the IPv6 IP address there as well. Okay, so the final menu then is the Streams menu. If I just open that up, you'll see that we have 5 tabs. This Illustra Pro fisheye camera can have up to 5 streams depending on their configuration, and each of those tabs will allow you to configure one of those streams. There's a few options here. First of all, we have the image source drop down. We also have the codec. We have the resolution. You can set the frame rate with the frame rate slider. You can set the bitrate control, either variable or constant, and you can also choose to enable a second stream.